guys, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to go through how I made this recent fox. She's called Nadir, the celestial fox. So if you want to see how I made her, then stay tuned. Alright, so first of all I'm starting off with casting the actual head, and this particular head has glass eyes. So if you want to know how I cast my head, you can actually purchase a tutorial on my shop at creaturesofnat.com. I go through everything that I do in this procedure. It comes in a zip file that you'll have to unzip, and it comes with a video and a PDF, so everything's covered. And what I'm doing now is I'm just cleaning up the resin around the eyes and any flashing that is visible on the fox head, and this is what we're left with when I have cleaned everything up and it is ready for painting. So I'm going to prep the surface with some primer. I actually have a primer video that I will try and remember to link, but I never do. But I do have a primer video on my channel that you can check out if you want to know what primer I use. I then go ahead and paint all the surfaces that are exposed, so that's really the nose, the eyes and the mouth. And a little recommendation is if you have any black fur going on the resin, then I recommend painting that as well, and that way you won't have so much white see-through when you apply your fur, or maybe you have a different method of doing it, but I like to paint the surfaces that I'm going to apply with black fur in the black paint. And I probably wouldn't recommend using expensive brushes for this because I give my brushes a hell of a workout and I end up throwing them away. And also, lucky resin is pretty sturdy because I dropped the head. But that's a good thing about resin, is it is really durable, so you can drop it like I did and it won't break. But with polymer clay, it's a little bit more fragile, so there's more chance of it breaking. It's also more durable when you're posing the doll as well, that's resin, whereas polymer clay isn't as posable. And I'll probably give the painted surfaces 2 to 3 coats of paint, and that's what we have. I'm going to leave the head to dry, and then moving on to the paws, and the same deal with the face, except you don't have to be neat for this. Sorry, it's a little blurry. I didn't realise that my camera wasn't focusing. So I just go over really quickly with a big brush because it's going to be covered in fur anyway. So no need to be too pedantic with how the paint goes on the feet. And this is also a resin cast that I have sculpted, molded and cast in resin. And I just recently redone my wolf paw mold as well. Moving on to the fur, and this doll has 3 different coloured furs. So the front half of the fox will be white. So I'm just going through my scrap bag of white fur. Sometimes there's large enough pieces that I can cut out. And then I'm moving on to some of the blue fur. This is a bit darker than the blue that I originally did back in the day when I made this fox in the first place. And then moving on to the black fur, which will be at the back end of the fox. And the tip of the tail will be white as well, so I'll also cut that out. So this is a medium length pile. It's not too thick. And I'm just going to cut out the patterns that I have drawn on the back of the fabric, and I like to use a pair of small scissors. That way I can get the scissor blades in between the pile of the fur, and I'm only cutting the backing and not the actual pile. So yeah, I mean, you can use any way you want. You can use a blade, you can use larger scissors, but for me, using small scissors work really well as opposed to a blade, because I find the blade actually stretches the back of the fabric, and sometimes that can be a little annoying. And this is the blue fur that I'm going to be using. It's like a nice navy blue, and this is probably the better quality bit of the fur, like the really high grade quality fur. It's super thick, so something to keep in mind when you're using the sewing machine is that thick fur is a little hard to sew, so just be careful when you're sewing on the machine. If you're hand sewing, that's probably no problem anyway. And the last one, like I said, is the white fur. It's pretty much the same as that black fur, not as thick as the blue one, but it's all 3 furs are the same length and the same quality, I guess. So it all flows really, really nicely as well. So cutting that out using my scissors again, and I'm going to go prep it to sew up on the sewing machine. So all I do is pin the fur sides together, and then I go ahead and sew it while getting overrun by cats. And sewing is my least favourite part of making dolls. I hate it, to say the least, but yeah, it's a lot quicker and it's a lot stronger than hand sewing things, especially if you have weakish sort of hands as well. So using a sewing machine really, really helps with that. Or if you generally just dislike sewing like I do, machine is a godsend. So this is what we have once I've sewn everything up. I've got the legs still open, and I also have the back end open and the neck area, and that way I can flip it the right way around. So you can see there was a bit more work going into this doll because of the different colour schemes on it, so it's a little bit more sewing than normal. And this is what we have once we have flipped the fur inside, well, the right way around. Looks like a bit of a blob right now, a fluffy blob, but this is what we're going to look like when I start putting things together. And also to keep in mind, just to be aware not to sew the pile of the fur down as well, because then it'll end up being a bit flat and you'll have to unpick all of the pile from the stitching. So something to keep in mind. So once I've dealt with the armature, so this one has a ball and socket armature, but I do have a wire armature tutorial in my shop as well if you're interested in that. I don't often use it anymore just because I prefer to use the ball and socket armature and it is a lot quicker. I sew the ends up with a ladder stitch. I also have that video if you're looking for how to do a ladder stitch with faux fur. But yeah, get yourself some good quality thread. That really, really makes a difference when you're hand sewing some things. Once I've sewn all of that up, I then stick the fur to the resin using a tacky fabric glue. It's not hard to find. You can find it in your local craft store. Nothing too fancy about this glue. So I just load up the actual fabric with this glue. Not too much because you don't want it to wet the actual pile of the fur and it sort of clumps together. But you'll find a good consistency for when you do it a couple of times. And then I stick it to the resin and leave it to dry overnight. And once that's done, I sew it up and break some needles. So I was trying to sew up the body and for some reason my needle had it and I broke it. So luckily it didn't fly off in my eye or anything, and I actually found both ends. So I'll have to go and find a new needle to sew it up. So this is what we have so far. Definitely needs a trim, and I'll be applying the fur to the face. So once I've done that, this is what I have. I go ahead and clean up the face area, removing any unwanted strands of fur. A little bit time consuming, but if you want your face to look clean, that's what you got to do. And then go back and paint any areas that need painting, just like a freshen up type thing, and paint in any little details that you want to paint in. I just use an acrylic paint and sometimes a fabric paint, and that way I can get the look that I want. I also airbrush sometimes if I'm doing a larger section or want to achieve a certain look. So this little one already has found a home, but I actually have a sculpture that is available, and a couple of little watercolors, a print, and a sticker set available in my shop. So you can head over there at creaturesofnat.com. You can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Creatures of Nat. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and you can also check out my Patreon if you want a little bit more, and that's at Creatures of Nat as well. And I'll catch you next time. Bye!